Hey, Clemson family, time to talk about the ups and the downs of Clemson's defense after 3 games, with them going into a stretch of ACC play that's going to truly test the Tigers.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Let's talk about DJ Uiagalele's improvement and the improvement of the entire offense as they get ready to play Wake Forest this Saturday.
I'm Bill Zimmerman. Welcome to episode 25 of the Supreme Alway podcast. We want to be your source for analysis of Clemson sports in 2022. We appreciate everyone who's been subscribing and commenting at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Please hit subscribe and like for us there. Also want to thank everyone following us on the major podcast apps, those of you who voted in our polls at twitter.com/Clemson Kickoff, and anyone listening via our homepage, clemsonkickoff.com. We've also got some other great resources there too. Well, let's start off with some of the defensive changes we saw Saturday night against Louisiana Tech, or at least some different results from that game than we saw in the first two. They learned how to defend a screen. Congratulations. But then the flip side of that was giving up more deep balls in the passing game than we'd seen.
There were some issues in the secondary. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I don't know how you could watch that game and say that the secondary played well. Gave up 300 yards passing for the second straight game. Now, there were some circumstances that led to that. Andrew Makuba didn't play. Nate Wiggins didn't play. Sheridan Jones got injured early in that game. So there's 3 of your main guys who didn't play at all or a majority of that game. So I guess to be expected that there are going to be some issues in the secondary, whether that was being in the wrong spot, whether that's in communication, whether that's in your eyes following the wrong things, whatever that was. There was a lot of that Saturday night.
Look, it's college football. Offenses are schemed now to find the space wherever you put it on the field. The bottom line is the bend but don't break mentality of the Tigers defense did continue. They were fairly decent in the red zone. There were a couple of touchdowns back to back in the second half of that game. Maybe guys were thinking, okay, we've got this put away. But overall, still pretty good at keeping the point totals low. You mentioned the injuries in the secondary. There also were injuries up front. Tyler Davis stayed out of the game. Xavier Thomas did not yet make his return. Perhaps Dabo Swinney wanting to save whatever they have in the tank to face that Wake Forest slow mesh next week and not feeling like the veterans really needed a week to get the rust shaken off. Also, they obviously did not have Brian Brzee, who missed the game for family reasons after the passing of his sister. So there's plenty of reason to believe that next week against Wake and the week after that against NC State that they can get back to holding offenses in check.
They just have to play cleaner, right? When you don't have your best guys, sometimes that's hard to play clean. They did the job for the majority of the game. There was a little bit of a lull in the third quarter where the defense did not live up to, what we were expecting this defense to be. But again, you're playing with a bunch of guys out there who may not play as much this week. The good thing about that, Bill, is you're getting those young guys some experience. So that's a real positive, and you can teach off of these moments where, they got to play and, well, maybe things didn't go like you want them to. So there's some positives there. There are some negatives that have to get cleaned up. But I think a lot of that starts because of who wasn't playing on Saturday night. But the parts they can clean up, they've got to get that done because Wake Forest is going to challenge you defensively. We know NC State's going to challenge you defensively. So there's a lot to clean up, and we'll see if they can get that done now that, hopefully they're going to be a little bit more healthy going into this Wake Forest game.
Along those lines, some interesting insight from Malcolm Green, one of the DBs who did have a lot of snaps Saturday night. He talked about the ways that Wes Goodwin is very similar to Brent Venables and making sure that guys are refining their technique. Here's a little clip from that interview, courtesy of TigerNet.com.
It was great, man, to know that we have a coach that wants it just as much or even more than us, and that he likes to fight also, he wants to go get it, and he's not going to settle for less also. Very similar to Coach V in that aspect. Those are 2 very competitive guys with very great football minds. And knowing that Wes is a guy that likes to sharpen up all the little things in every single play, down to the techniques, alignment, what you're looking at, how your feet place, everything. Just knowing that it's those little things that make big plays happen. And him teaching us that throughout the week and throughout the offseason has been very big and will lead to more success in the rest of the season.
And you can hear that entire interview at TigerNet.com or on their YouTube channel. So there is clearly work being done by the coaching staff. They know that these guys need to take another step forward. I think one of the things that concerns me, though, and something I didn't really like hearing out of Wes Goodwin, was that they were dropping guys in coverage more often in that game and still giving up those chunk plays, those, I don't want to say deep balls. They weren't necessarily like Chase Bryce up at App State for the end of the game, Hail Mary deep balls. Congratulations to him. But, they were gashing the defense more often than we would have liked to see by hitting the outside, by hitting those longer passes. Here's what Goodwin had to say about the scheme, again, courtesy of TigerNet.
Drop 8, just trying to get more guys in coverage because, they're an air raid team and love to throw it around. And, we're getting quick game and screen so much, just trying to make the quarterback hold the ball and get guys in the windows. And, I attribute that to 12 pass deflections as well as the 3 picks as well, just getting guys in the windows and trying to make the quarterback hold the ball longer. And obviously, have more zone eyes for the screen game.
And again, you can hear that whole interview at tigernet.com. And the plus side was that scheme did then help them contain that screen game that Georgia Tech and that even Furman had been able to use effectively against Clemson. And hopefully that makes a team like Wake or a team like NC State think twice about going to that well all day long.
We'll see how that plays out. The Tigers are facing 2 really good quarterbacks the next 2 weeks. Sam Hartman and Devin Leary are going to challenge this defense. So you want to be healthy. You want to have those guys up front. Tyler Davis, you mentioned Brzee. We'll see when he plays. Obviously, there are more important things than football for when he's going to return. And you want to have Makuba and Wiggins back. If they're not, then these other guys are going to have to step up. And again, Bill, you saw Toriano Pride play a lot. You saw Jaden Lucas play a lot. So that has to help them in their development as true freshmen. And then the other guys, Malcolm, I thought Green played really well. Mickens had a couple of the issues that Wes talked about, maybe looking at the wrong things, but then he had the big interception. So there was some good and bad for pretty much everybody out there. And I think that's what you kind of expect as you're kind of getting ready for the meat of your season.
Another thing that Green talked about, and we won't get into the clip, but basically how he's been moving around the field a lot, some corner, some nickel, some safety. We'd also seen that approach for Andrew Makuba before he was injured and missed this game. You have to wonder if maybe Goodwin is kind of moving guys around, seeing where they work best, seeing how the team works best together, and maybe we'll see guys settle into some roles the next couple of weeks as well.
I would hope so, because all that moving around at some point is going to catch up with you. And I get when coaches say, we want to be multiple. We want guys to be versatile and be able to play different positions, but you also have to settle in at some point and be who you are. And I'm okay with these first 3 games kind of being a feeling out process for this team and these coaches. I mean, there's a lot of coaches in new positions this year. So should be expected a little bit, that there's some learning going on, and that's okay. But now it's time for that to stop. Now it's time to get serious. And these might be the 2 biggest games on the schedule these next 2 weeks. And, you look and you might have said Notre Dame at the start. Well, Notre Dame has really struggled. You might have said Miami. I know a lot of people got caught up in the Miami hype train before the season, but Miami lost Saturday and looked terrible on offense. So, these 2 teams might be the biggest challenges for you all season, and that's especially true on offense, and you're going to have to play better defensively to slow these quarterbacks down.
Go ahead and subscribe to us at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. We'll keep you posted every time news happens. Let's go ahead and get into the offense now. DJ Uiagalelei continues to improve, probably looked more natural even than he did last week against Furman. Seems to be getting sort of a flow, sort of a groove, whatever you want to call it. Maybe the game's slowing down for him a little bit. Less thinking, more playing. And that seemed to either have a ripple effect on the entire offense, or other guys are playing better and helping him feel more at ease out there.
Probably a little bit of both, maybe. I thought DJ looked really good. He looked comfortable. He looked smooth. He ran the ball well. And I think maybe him running the ball like that got him into the flow a little bit. Remember when Taj Boyd used to say that? And why are they running him so much? And you're going to get him hurt and all those things that we say as fans. And Taj said, I love it because it gets me into the game and gets me lathered up a little bit. And so maybe that's what it was Saturday night with DJ. But I thought he threw the ball well. He had a good pocket for most of the game. There was one sack, and Dabo and DJ and Brandon Streeter all pretty much said that was on DJ because he didn't read the hot read. But again, still some improvement that could be made. There's no doubt about that. But he threw the ball really well and looked more like, I think, what we thought he was going to be Saturday night than maybe at any point the last year and a half.
And a little bit, as Tim Hasselbeck pointed out, where he was able to sort of take some off of some throws. You think about baseball legend Sandy Koufax, who really blossomed once someone convinced him to take 2 or 3 miles an hour off the fastball, right? So maybe as he gets more of a feel for the game, he's starting to also develop some touch throwing the ball. He had the great deep ball, on the other hand, to Joseph Ngata. He had some other good downfield throws as well. Great catch for Ngata on that deep play. We'll get into some numbers later this week during our Wake preview episode. But Brandon Streeter talked about 2 things that he really wanted the offense to work on and that he sees through 3 games coming together nicely. Here's his quote again from TigerNet.com.
I mean, the top 2 things we really wanted to work on as an offense, all right, there's a lot of things, but the top 2 things is red zone offense and third down. And both of those things have improved these first 3 games. So plenty to clean up, but, man, I'm really, really proud of these guys for that.
And you can hear the rest of that interview at TigerNet.com or their YouTube channel. I really did think the offense actually caught up in the red zone performance to the defense. Defense has been mostly reliable in the red zone. It was nice to see the offense kind of match that performance.
It was. I thought, again, the offense, there's some field goals being kicked, but that's okay. I mean, you don't want to live off field goals, but you do. If you score, you score. And that has to be a positive result. It's not a touchdown. It's not what you want, but it's not the end of the world either. That said, you do want to see a higher percentage of touchdowns when you get in the red zone. You'd love to see mostly touchdowns, but so far so good. I thought it was a big improvement offensively, what I saw Saturday night being in the stadium from what I have seen the first 2 games, and a huge improvement over what we saw last year. I don't think there's any doubt about that, Bill. And it was an exciting night in the stadium, the light show and the sounds and all that stuff that they're doing now at the stadium. It was really fun. It was outstanding. But I think the team's play lived up to that as well, and that was a lot of fun.
Increased movement on offense pre-snap. You saw how they rolled out right on the first play of the game, then threw the ball back all the way across the field to Spector at the left. That went for 15 yards. Obviously, Louisiana Tech was not prepared for that. So maybe they're starting to open up the playbook a little bit as everybody's getting comfortable. Maybe there were some changes that people need to wrap their head around as the season goes on. And look, we knew that this would be sort of 3, I don't want to say preseason games, but if they were going to work on something, these would be the 3 weeks that they had to really take a progression as they did an install, get guys their sea legs with anything that was new to them, because you can't start pulling that stuff out for the first time against Wake and NC State. We may see some new play calls, but you would think they wanted to build off the elements that are behind them.
We talked a lot about this summer that, hey, the schedule is, I don't know, easy. I don't think we should say easy, but it's manageable, right? And I was mostly thinking about the offense. It's going to allow the offense to, like you said, get its legs under them and move forward. As you've watched these 3 games, and I've been in the stadium for all 3, Bill, I think that applies to the whole team. I think it applies to, you got some new starters on defense and guys in new spots on defense. You've got 1 new starter on the offensive line. He's a true freshman. You've got 2 starters on the offensive line who are in new spots. So it feels like there's a lot of new there, and the coaching staff has a lot of new spots too. So these first 3 games, I think we can almost look at them as like a preseason, and now things are really on the line as you go up to Wake Forest on Saturday.
Streeter mentioned only 2 targets for Antonio Williams Saturday night, but certainly made the most of them. Adam Randall, he talked about needing to get in shape to last an entire ball game. So there's room for improvement on offense if those 2 guys can sort of cement their place in the wide receiver room and be ready to compete more as well. But again, nice game out of Joseph Ngata, the kind that we've been wanting to see. Bo Collins still looking good, looking very reliable and solid. Spector looking a little better than usual. And, La Tech did have some all-conference defensive backs out there. They all need to work on getting more separation and getting open more often, and maybe feed off of Williams' ability to get some yardage after catch that other guys haven't really been showing off very much.
And catch the ball. And we saw that, I think, a little bit better. We've talked about the receiving of the ball. We talked about that last episode. I mean, the catch from Joseph Ngata on that deep ball is as good a catch as you're ever going to see. I mean, he laid out, he's parallel with the ground, and he gets his hands on the ball, and he doesn't let it get away. Well, then he ran a slant pattern later in the game, and it hit him right in the hands, and he dropped it. So there has to be some more consistency with the receivers. But you're right about Antonio Williams, man. He is something special, and I love what I've seen from him. I'd love to see him get the ball a little bit more, because when he's in there, he makes things happen. So you can't predetermine who you're going to throw the ball to in college, I don't think. But I do think they need to get him more involved in this offense.
You know, I'm just thinking about this now. We didn't talk about before the show or anything, but a little less Davis Allen and Jake Brenningstool in this game, wasn't there?
There was. I mean, Davis had a really nice play on a third down near the goal line to help set up a score, where he, ran a pattern down the middle of the field, and DJ kind of looked off the defenders and came back to him, and they got the first down. But you're right. They weren't nearly as involved as it felt like they were the first couple of weeks.
It'll be interesting to see what Wake has on defense. I was surprised that the Liberty game was as close as it was. I was kind of thinking Saturday morning the ACC network would cut away from that Wake game, that they'd be well ahead of Liberty, and we'd get to see the opening, running down the hill at night for the very first time with the new lights, with the new Jumbotron. Then, of course, ESPN didn't have it on air at all. So lucky you were there to see it in person, unlike those of us who were trying to tune in from home and figure out where they were putting the game. And even on their streaming platform, it didn't start on time at all, or even close, and clearly was on somewhat of a tape delay there. So for Wake to give up 30 plus points to Liberty was surprising to me, especially with Hartman running the offense. You'd have thought they could have controlled the ball a little more, kept Liberty's offense off the field a little better. Maybe Clemson won't have to lean on the defense quite so much as we would have thought, and maybe the offense will have an opportunity to look as good against Wake as it has the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, there could be. And you remember this game last year was probably the best game of the season for Clemson's offense, right? I mean, they ran the ball well. DJ had the long touchdown throw to Bo Collins, and Clemson dominated this game and controlled the game throughout. So that maybe there's some confidence going into this one that they can play like they did last year and get off to a good start. Bill, they've gotten off to really good starts the last 2 weeks. Remember how bad they were the first quarter against Georgia Tech? Well, last week, they were 5 for 5 with DJ out there for touchdowns. And Saturday, they go right down the field. They do kick a field goal, but they get some points. Next drive, touchdown. So let's see that coming up on Saturday as well.
Another key that Brandon Streeter talked about, we won't get into the clip, but he said the one-on-one balls, the wide receiver against man coverage, that those one-on-ones have to be wins for the offense. And that's not always just them. Sometimes it's maybe the QB putting the ball in the right spot. And I think we did see more of that the last couple of weeks from Uiagalelei and from his receivers. Just a matter of a few more successes there can make a big difference in the ball game and really force a defense to respect the passing game and not load up to stop Shipley, to stop Maffa, to stop Pace, or to stop Uiagalelei running the ball, as he's become a little better on his feet as well.
Definitely. And they have to have that kind of balance. And it's not throw it 40 and run it 40, but it's the ability to do both whenever you need to. And if you have the 4-minute drill, well, hey, let's run the ball and let's run this clock out. But if they're going to stack the box, then we need to throw it. And just like Dabo said Saturday night, last year they really struggled if they had to get a first down throwing the ball. They just weren't good at it. And there were a lot of reasons. So we know all the reasons. We've broken those down since we started doing this podcast, but they don't look like that now, Bill. And even the play that we just talked about with Davis Allen, I think it was 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. He runs a 7-yard pattern, and it was perfect. The C opened up, the safety went with the other receiver, and he's wide open, and DJ sees him. And it's exactly how you draw up that play, and that's what you need to see from this offense.
The windows are going to get a little tighter. There's no question about that. The defenses will be better as the season goes on, but a lot to be encouraged about. And frankly, I think this offense is farther along right now, 3 games in, even against 3 opponents that certainly weren't among the top half of the Clemson schedule for this year. There's a lot to hang their hat on and to take that ability into these matchups against higher ranked teams. One other thing you mentioned before the podcast started up, and it got me thinking about the offense getting on a roll. You can start to wear defenses down too. And you talked a little bit about how that was something that started coming together under Chad Morris.
You remember when Chad Morris was Clemson's offense coordinator, and look, he did a great job. And when he left, it was time to move on and do something different. I'm not advocating for him to come back, but there was a plan of let's get first downs. And, if it's 2nd and 2, don't go for the kill right now, but let's get a first down and let's try to get on a roll and get some momentum. Let's stack those first downs on top of each other and really kind of wear the defense down. And that does mean something, I think, in these games. And there was a lot more tempo with this offense back then. I would love to see that a little bit more now. We saw it a little bit on Saturday. The first play, they throw the throwback to Spector. And then the next play, they're right back up. They throw the quick screen out to the receiver, and there's a catch. Okay, now we're on a roll, and they move the ball right down the field. I would love to see some more of that coming out of this offense.
That was one other thing that Brandon Streeter talked about, was sort of playing complementary football. And while he didn't get into, hey, we have to run a lot of plays to keep the defense fresh and off the field, it's certainly one thing that is a result of good complementary football, of the offense doing its job, the defense doing its job. He talked about there's a turnover, the defense picks them up. The defense has a big stand and gets good field position. The offense should be able to punch it in and take advantage of that. Certainly one way the offense can do that is to get back into those 80 plus play totals for games against quality opponents.
I'd love to see it. I really would. Remember the games when, they would roll up 100 plays and you just see how gassed the defense was. I don't know that they need to get back to that. And you can mix it in. Hey, let's go fast this drive, or, we might need to slow it down this drive a little bit. But I'd love to see a lot more of that in the offense. And I do feel like maybe Brandon is finding his footing a little bit too as the coordinator. We're talking about the players and, kind of getting in a groove. Well, maybe Brandon's doing that as well. It's been a while since he's been the one on the headset calling everything in a game. So he'll get into a role with that as well. And we'll see that going Saturday.
He did talk a little bit about that, and also the coaching staff in general, just kind of getting into a groove, working together, some new faces in the room. And also probably, I would imagine, figuring out that upstairs versus sideline kind of divide and making sure the lines of communication and people are, thinking what they would have been thinking on the practice field together, despite one guy, being eyes in the sky and another one being down there with the players. So should be interesting. What else might you be looking for this week going into the season's first difficult road game at Wake Forest? Not to take the bloom off the rose of the next episode, but just maybe kind of a quick summary of what you'll be looking for.
I'd love to see a lot more of Will Shipley. Let's just say that. Let's see some more of those 10 yards per carry plays. I like those plays when you average 10 yards a play and you give the ball to Will Shipley. I want to see the running game and the offensive line really take control of this game on Saturday. That would be a lot of fun.
And for me, and hopefully we'll get into this later in the week, I really want to see that defense sort of be ready to stay in their lanes while working that slow mesh and working through it and causing disruption in the backfield. I'm not entirely sure that they can force Sam Hartman into as many mistakes this year as they forced him into last year, but they do have to disrupt. They do have to keep Wake off balance to some extent. And hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that down the road. Well, I hope everyone has enjoyed this episode. We are glad you found us, Clemson family. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button. You can keep up with everything that's going on, and it's the easiest way to help us keep this a free podcast. Our homepage, clemsonkickoff.com, also has some great resources. We update kickoff times there as they're announced. We've got some other good resources, so check that out. Again, clemsonkickoff.com. We're also on Twitter at Clemson Kickoff. We retweet news as it happens, give some quick hit opinions in real time, and you won't miss a beat day to day keeping up with the Tigers. Well, until that next episode before the Wake game, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.
A lot of excitement about that, though, and Shoot, I forgot what I was going to say.